Tonight, shots fired near the remand centre. A major police operation underway. We'll cross live. The Liberal Party accuses the Victorian Electoral Commission of meddling with the election. A grieving sister slams Victoria's ambulance system after her brother died alone. Relief for the loved ones of MH17 victims as 3 murderers are sentenced to life in prison. Frustrated Sunshine students show the world the decrepit condition of their school. And Qatar's stunning threat to ban beer on the eve of the World Cup.
This is Melbourne's 9 News with Peter Hitchener.
Good evening. We begin with breaking news. Police have swarmed an intersection in West Melbourne amid reports shots were fired this afternoon. Mimi Becker's at the scene on Spencer Street. Mimi, what more do we know?
Pete, police were called here to the intersection of Batman and Spencer Street at 4:30 this afternoon, responding to reports that shots had been fired. We understand that residents in the apartment block behind me have heard a warning from police for everyone to stay inside their apartments and that they are not allowed to leave the building. For those that are stuck outside the building, they're not allowed inside either. This afternoon, we did see members of the Specialist Operation Group here responding in their Bearcat. At the moment, we have the CERT operation here on the scene, as well as ambulance paramedics here standing by. This is very much a breaking news situation. Pete, just reiterating there, police are responding to reports of shots fired here on the corner of Spencer and Batman Street this afternoon. Pete?
OK, thank you, Mimi Becker, for that report. The Liberal Party has taken the extraordinary step of accusing the independent Victorian Electoral Commission of interfering in the election. The opposition bombshell claims commentary around the Mitch Catlin scandal has damaged public trust in the process. State political reporter Mark Santomartino.
Matthew Guy insists he's done nothing wrong.
I have complied to the full extent of the law. Totally. What more would you want from me?
But Victoria's Electoral Commission has now twice suggested otherwise.
Did Matthew Guy refuse to cooperate with you? That's not IBAC, that's you.
I am saying that people that we invited to speak with us did not satisfy our inquiries.
Lawyers have since sent a cease and desist letter to the VEC arguing an intent to damage the Liberal Party in the state election, which could potentially erode trust in the electoral process. On Sunday, the VEC conceded its investigation will not be resolved prior to the state election.
What we've seen today is an unprecedented attack by the Liberal Party on the independence and the integrity of the Victorian Electoral Commission.
Yesterday, it asked IBAC to take over and look into emails suggesting Matthew Guy's former Chief of Staff Mitch Catlin had drawn up a contract to supplement his income with cash from a wealthy Liberal Party donor. There are legal loopholes, and the impression that these interviews with the VEC are giving off is that you are lying.
Well, I'm sorry, I totally disagree with that, and I don't accept that whatsoever.
My staff are not paid by under-the-table corporate donations. Never.
But Daniel Andrews' Chief of Staff Lizzie Ratcliffe was also making headlines, having met with Glenn Drury in 2019, an election fixer whose methods were exposed in this leaked meeting with the Angry Victorians Party.
You want to govern?
Yeah.
I can help. You want to keep the GVT? That's great. We can keep the Greens at bay. That's how the conversations go.
The Premier holding out for a review before considering changes to the way Victorians vote.
I don't employ the bloke. I don't know the bloke. My party has never employed him, nor will we. He was there because the Hinch Party, in their wisdom, employed him as a staffer.
We must reform the undemocratic group voting system that we have for the upper house here in Victoria.
We can change it today. We can agree to change it today. If the Premier agrees to change it today, I certainly do, we can end all this.
After the past week, it's no wonder why more Victorians are tipped to turn to minor parties and the independents. Pete, integrity should be a non-negotiable for anyone who wants a seat in this place, yet time and time again we report on scandals and now a broken voting system that can clearly be exploited. The only way you and our viewers at home can prevent that is if they vote below the line on the upper house ballot. That'll be the bigger of the 2 pieces of paper you receive when you go to vote. There are a lot of boxes, so follow the instructions carefully. You have to number at least 5 in order of your preference. Pete?
Mark Santomartino reporting. The ambulance union has sensationally joined the election race, labelling the Liberals a virus as a war erupts over health funding. But as Heidi Murphy explains, the term has sparked immediate calls for an apology to all Victorians.
Stepping up and teeing off.
You can't draw a comparison between the performance of the Victorian health system under a pandemic with the performance of the Victorian health system under Liberals. The Liberals back then were the virus.
That word choice drawing anger.
Danny Hill's comments are extraordinary and he should apologise.
It was a comment the Premier repeated.
He said the Liberals were the virus. The Liberals were the virus.
Well, that's an extraordinary comment to make. I mean, that is insulting to every single Victorian.
No back down likely from a union that fought strongly for Labor in 2014.
I don't ever want them near my members again, and you don't ever want them near your health system again.
The union was defending ambulance wait times from claims they've been worse now than when the coalition left office.
All those years before COVID arrived, we delivered the very best ambulance response times in the history of our state. And we will return to that level.
Too late for the sister of Robert Spencer, who died in February after calling 000.
The system is broken.
The volunteer firefighter was found dead when an ambulance arrived 3 hours after his call.
We're not in a third world country, but this is a service that we're getting at the moment.
Certainly let me extend our deepest sympathies to that family, offer our condolences and assure that family that he will not be forgotten.
Susan doesn't want the failings forgotten either.
It needs to be fixed.
Labor's announced $26 million it'll spend if re-elected on training 40 new MICA paramedics and building a new centre for paramedicine. They've also agreed to something else that the union's been pushing for a number of years, a review of the non-urgent patient transport system to decide if it should be part of the wider ambulance service. It'll be headed by former union boss MP Steve McGee, regardless of if he holds his seat next Saturday.
Well, that's a matter for the people of the Melbourne electorate.
Heidi Murphy, 9 News.
8 years after a Malaysia Airlines flight was shot out of the sky, killing 298 people, a big step towards justice. 3 fugitives have been convicted in absentia at a trial in the Netherlands, giving families who've waited for so long some relief. Brett McLeod was there.
For Australian relatives in the Dutch courtroom, the moment they've waited 8 years for.
De rechtbank is van oordeel.
The court imposes a lifelong prison sentence to Gherkin, Dubinsky and Karchenko.
There is a measure of relief in that now the truth has been told to a world audience and that the world knows what happened.
Matthew Horder was there from the Sunshine Coast. He lost his parents, Susan and Howard.
To have, a court at a high level confirm that this is what happened and that, those people were deliberately murdered by those 3 defendants is very important for the families.
2 former Russian intelligence officers and a Ukrainian separatist commander in the Donetsk region found guilty of 298 counts of murder and causing the crash of MH17. The 4th Russian man was acquitted. Citing video evidence and wiretaps, the judges found it was beyond doubt the flight was shot down by a Buk missile.
Do you feel like you got justice today?
There's some justice, I guess, in confirming those facts and the truth.
John and Merrin O'Brien are from Old Toon Gabby. Their son Jack was 25 when he was killed.
I also feel sad though. Yeah, because, for all of us it doesn't change anything, so it's a measure of justice, but it would be complete justice if our family members were restored to us.
That these people could decide to down a civilian aircraft.
Sorry.
Hang on, just take a second. With children on it, it's beyond words. They're tired, sorry.
Vanaf een landbouwveld.
The court is aware that imposing these sentences cannot take away the pain and suffering, but does hope, now that clarity has been provided about who is to blame.
So 3 of the 4 defendants found guilty of the murders of 298 people aboard flight MH17. But the court also went into forensic detail, linking their actions to the Russian Federation.
The missile was supplied by Russia and fired from Russian-held territory. The spokesperson for the Russian Foreign Ministry saying they will study the decision.
It remains a source of grief and it remains a source of anger for the families that Russia still to this time has not accepted any responsibility for what they've done.
We call upon Russia to hand over for justice the people who are involved in this and who've been found to be guilty in absentia.
Adding to their pain, the war that cost their loved ones' lives has seen thousands more killed in the years since.
Putin, stop this senseless violence. We do not need it, and Ukraine has had enough.
In Amsterdam, Brett McLeod, 9 News.
The three men who were convicted yesterday are believed to be either in Russia or fighting with Russian forces in Ukrainian territory, so it's unlikely they're going to be facing jail anytime soon. And there are still missing pieces in this puzzle, from those who actually pushed the button to fire the missile to whoever in the highest levels of the Russian government gave the orders for it to be used. Those people are still to face any form of justice.
Brett McLeod reporting. Students at Sunshine College have made a desperate plea to the state government to rebuild their classrooms. The school community has released a startling video showing the dire state of their public high school, which they say is unsafe. Here's Shubha Krishnan.
They say it's their last resort, making this 3-minute video for YouTube. Year 10 students Frank and Bailey walk through classrooms, pointing out large cracks in the wall, caved-in ceilings and rooms infested with black mould.
We don't use these tours at all anymore because of the black mould and because it's not safe for a child to be in.
Dilapidated buildings, some areas just too unsafe to use. The multi-campus public high school largely unchanged since it first opened.
My pop used to come to the school when it was a boys and girls school. This whole building, everything here hasn't changed since he was here. So it's been around for a very long time, and as you can see, it's slowly falling apart.
While the teenagers proudly show off a brand new science room, they say more needs to be done, calling on the Andrews government to save the day.
Please give us funding for our school so we have a better situation and education and environment for the future generations coming along.
We've invested $41 million to deliver one stage of that really important upgrade and redevelopment of that school.
But the school council says they don't know how the $41 million has been spent. For years they've been asking questions, but they can't get answers.
What they don't take into account as well is that some of that money was to get rid of the asbestos that was in the old building, to get rid of the rocks before they could do the buildings, and that was all at the West Campus. So we haven't really had $41 million spent on the school.
We're just fed up, really, not to be rude, but would like to get a better facilities just so future generations of Sunshine College could get a better education.
Shubha Krishnan, 9 News.
A man who stole more than $100,000 from women he met on dating apps could walk free from jail before Christmas after his non-parole period was slashed by 3 months on appeal. Christopher Collins convinced women he was a professional gambler, then accessed their phones to open betting accounts and drain their finances. A judge found the 33-year-old has taken steps to seek help for his gambling addiction. The ex-girlfriend of a murdered father of 3 has faced court, one of 5 people charged over his stabbing death in the CBD. As Penelope Learsh reports, Ricky Rowlands was attacked outside a hotel housing the homeless during Melbourne's lockdown.
This is the moment police allege Candice Harper stands over her ex-partner's body in a King Street gutter after he'd been fatally stabbed. The jury told there was little love lost between them. The court heard father of 3 Ricky Rowlands was attacked outside the Ibis Hotel that was housing the homeless during lockdown in October 2020. 5 people are now on trial over his death. Benjamin McCartan was living at the hotel. He is charged with murder. The prosecution telling the jury when he stabbed Mr Rowlands he intended to kill him or cause him really serious injury. Candice Harper, the mother of Ricky Rowlands' teenage daughter, is facing a murder charge, as is Ms Harper's new partner Jamie Holt. They were also residents of the hotel. They assisted in various ways, the court heard, grappling with him on the ground while he was stabbed, arguably holding him down. Two more people, Jacinda Brown and Dale Miller, are accused of supplying the knife moments earlier. They're charged with manslaughter. Today, the doctor who performed the autopsy explained how 3 stab wounds punctured the victim's lung, liver, stomach, kidney and aorta. The injuries he had sustained were non-survivable. He died in hospital the next day. The daughter of Ricky Rowlands and Ms Harper was just 16 at the time. She lived with her father but spent significant periods with her mother. She'll be called to give evidence. The trial is expected to run for a number of weeks. Penelope Leash, 9 News.
After 650 days behind bars in Myanmar, Australian professor Sean Turnell has touched down on home soil, arriving in Melbourne this morning. The former advisor to deposed leader Aung San Suu Kyi was reunited with his wife at the airport. He'd been detained for allegedly violating the country's State Secrets Act and is said to be in good health and spirits. North Korea's latest missile test has rattled leaders' nerves at the APEC summit in Thailand and sparked a crisis meeting. There were also chaotic scenes outside the summit as riot police and protesters faced off. More from Charles Croucher.
On the streets of Bangkok, police and protesters clash outside a summit promoting peace. Inside, the Prime Minister and a declaration.
Australia's back.
So too Emmanuel Macron, raising a toast at the APEC gala after raising the sunken submarine deal once more.
On en avait parlé dès sa visite cet été.
The choice made by Prime Minister Morrison, the French president said, was to enter into nuclear confrontation.
C'est-à-dire celle d'une liberté de la souveraineté.
Saying the AUKUS deal leaves us closer to conflict with China.
President Macron is entitled to put forward his views as he does in a very forthright way.
The Prime Minister dismissing claims Australia would be reliant on allies, downplaying chances of buying French subs in the interim.
We are proceeding with the AUKUS arrangements. There's nothing ambiguous about it.
Despite meticulous planning and delicate diplomacy, a reminder at this summit of the more imminent threat posed by North Korea. Kim Jong-un's latest intercontinental ballistic missile test sparking concern at the summit.
It destabilises security in the region and unnecessarily raises tensions.
A greater reach for the rogue state, prompting a hastily convened crisis council as allies coordinate a regional reply.
Australia supports the convening of an emergency session of the United Nations Security Council.
In Thailand, Charles Croucher, 9 News.
A peak hour protest has taken over La Trobe Street in the city as hundreds of cyclists call for dedicated routes and wider footpaths. It's the latest debate over the future of Sydney Road in Brunswick and Coburg, used by more than 2,000 cyclists a day. The Greens are calling for one lane of the busy road to be dedicated to cyclists. Well, it's approaching crunch time for Tasmania's AFL dream, with the league and the state government today reaching an in-principle agreement. As Braden Ingram tells us, the deal ultimately hinges on funding for a new stadium in Hobart's CBD.
Presenting to hundreds of investors in Hobart, this was Gillan McLaughlin, the salesman.
I'm here to talk about the only thing that matters in Tasmania, the 19th licence. And I know it's a pretty heavy room and you all think you're pretty big deals, but front page of Hobart Mercury.
The league boss hitching his wagon to Tassie's team push, having taken an important step with the state government.
We've reached in principle agreement on commercial terms for a Tasmanian team.
And many of the hurdles have already been cleared.
We've come a long way with our clubs, and so they've had detailed information around every aspect of the bid. There's 11 points. We've got 10 of the 11 boxes largely ticked.
But financing the multi-million-dollar stadium remains the big challenge. And while the AFL unveiled its latest design for the waterfront build, they'll need to go cap in hand to the federal government as well as investors to secure the required funds.
At the moment, the momentum is there. But, you know, I think everyone is really clear about the steps that have got to be done. One is the stadium. Two is passing through my board, my commission and our 18 clubs.
No pain, no gain. And we have a lot to gain in Tasmania.
Today's progress ensures the AFL will have a continued presence in the state, with Hawthorn and North Melbourne signing on to play games there again next season. The timeline for a final decision is up in the air, but one thing seems certain: there'll be no second chances if the bid falls short.
This is a now or never moment in my view.
Braden Ingram, 9 News.
Now looking ahead to more sport, Tony Jones.
Thanks, Pete. Good evening. We've got some breaking news from Doha for you. We'll be live to Clint Stanaway for details on the cup with no beer. That's later. Also tonight, read my lips. We'll tell you what Steve Smith said. In fact, he had a lot more to say after that terrific knock against England.
We're always looking for perfection, and for me, yesterday was probably as close to perfection as I'll get.
In footy, a couple of former Cats find new homes. Ablett becomes a Magpie, while Joel Selwood has switched codes. And on the eve of Rugby League's World Cup final, the Australians are caught between a rock and a hard place. I'm as confused as you, but anyway, we'll explain all that later in sport.
Good work, thank you, Tony. When we return, Forever 15, family and friends remember murdered teen Cassius Turvey. Also, smoke warnings in Melbourne's west as a scrap metal plant goes up in flames, and Democratic stalwart Nancy Pelosi suddenly calls it quits.